One of the questions I get a lot at the board level is what does good look like? And good looks like, you found everything and you've implemented a crypto-agility architecture, and you're slowly over the course of this year moving your most at-risk areas under the protection of crypto-agility as you go forward. But crypto-agility is this concept of there's always going to be another algorithm. There's going to be another threat. This decade it's the quantum threat, but who knows what next year is going to be, something else. We never predicted this threat, and in the 1970s, we used to say the PKI would last, 1,000 lifetimes. And we said that very confidently. So who knows what the future holds? So putting in the concept of crypto agility allows you to rotate your algorithms throughout your organization from a central, organized, orchestrated button.
Well, Tom Patterson, welcome to Vigilance, my podcast. I'm so honored to have you here today. We're going to talk about quantum. I'm getting lots of questions from my group of 50 Fortune 500 CISOs about this. And I would first like just to kick it off and let you introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Pam. It's really good to be here on your podcast with you. I know you talk to a lot of really important people around the world. So I appreciate the chance to come on and talk about one of my passions, which is quantum security and making sure that the world prepares in advance rather than reacts after the problem hits. So I appreciate the time with you today. As you said, my name's Tom Patterson. I'm the managing director for all of emerging technology security at Accenture. And we have, you can imagine, we're one of the world's largest security companies and have been for quite some time. We have a lot of emerging technology that we bring to our clients. So I was brought on about a couple of years ago to take what has been going on in our research and development labs and figure out the right ways to bring that to our clients around the world. It's at the right time, in the right form, and what's really needed. And I've really been, I think it's the best job in the world, get access to all these smart people, all this great technology, and really look forward. I'm an over-the-horizon guy. I spent some time, working on national policy in the U.S. with the National Cyber Moonshot to look forward at what the world is going to look like in 10 more years from a technology perspective and what we should be doing about it now from a security perspective. And that really brought open a lot of insights to me. And that's what I try and bring to our clients around the world, focusing this year on generative AI security, which obviously is a big issue with everybody ever since ChatGPT downloaded a year or so ago, but also quantum security, which is very important. It's more than just a simple little risk of, oh, well, we'll have to patch that sometime, but it could destabilize the entire economies of the world. So we want to make sure that the whole world gets that solution right. And I also work on space security, which is going to affect people by the end of this decade. And there's a lot of really fun, optimistic things happening in space and a lot of need for security and cybersecurity in space. We like to say at Accenture, we put cyber into space. So everyone talks about cyberspace, but we're actually doing it later this year. We'll be launching a satellite specifically around cybersecurity and being able to test some real emerging technology things like quantum. So happy to be here. Love to talk to you about quantum security and what we're doing here, what we see clients doing around the world, and where we see the technology going. It's a great time to be focused on this year.
It is interesting because it's not been a focus, right? I was in Tel Aviv a little over a year ago, and I had a panel on quantum, and this group of CISOs I brought with me, were, this isn't, I don't have to worry. I have so many problems. I don't have to worry about this today. But suddenly this year they are worrying about it. And the common question, as you said, the elephant in the room is how far off is the quantum security issue?
Yeah, no, it is the question du jour. I will give you a couple of quick stories about that. One, when I got involved in this was 2015, when President Obama asked his advisory group, which I was a part of, what are the biggest security issues we're going to face, cybersecurity issues we're going to face by 2030? What's the world going to look like then? And I had never focused on quantum computing. 2015, it was a paper exercise. It had been theorized. Einstein looked at it in the 1960s and said it was spooky, and that kind of kept everybody else from even considering it. But in 2015, a couple things happened. It went from paper to practice. So they built a working quantum computer. It was tiny, and it lasted for less than a second, but it worked, and it brought that concept to reality. And once that started, lots of R&D money started going into that, and the growth of the quantum computing area has just been spectacular. And it's less than a decade old in terms of building one of these things. So it's just spectacular growth, and we can maybe get into some of the details of that soon. The other is, the last 4 years I've gone to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, and I've talked on quantum security there. And the previous 3 years, previous to 2024, the first question was always, is this real? Is this a real thing? What do I have to do? Now this year, not a single question from kings and presidents and world leaders. Nobody asked if it was real. They all knew it was real. They asked, what do we do about it? And so that really has translated into a year of action and protection and proactive responses to the quantum security issues that are out there. So definitely looking at it from it's advancing very quickly. The encryption that we use today for encryption in motion was based on a math problem that was developed in the 1970s. And it's a really simple concept. I mean, yes, Einstein called quantum security or quantum really spooky, but this is something everybody can do. Like Pam, multiply 3 times 5. What's the answer?
And 15.
15, absolutely. So that was my first test.
Oh, that was a test if I was paying attention.
The theory was in the 1970s that, any computer that we have will be able to multiply 2 prime numbers together and figure out what the answer is. That's not that hard. But
Right.
If I was to say, Pam, what are the 2 factors that multiply up to make 15? And you have to then think about it. Well, let's see, what are the 2 numbers that you multiply together to get 15? Now, if it's a 2-digit number, you can figure out, it's 3 and 5. We just talked about that. But what if it's a 600-digit number?
Right.
The theory was in the 1970s that we'll never make a computer fast enough to be able to factor really big numbers. And so that is what the concept of public key encryption is all built on. That becomes part of that shared secret that makes it easy for you and I to not know each other previously and have an encrypted conversation. That's how all commerce works. That's how all banking works and transportation works. Everything we do, when you're watching this video, everything is encrypted. It's in motion with a public key encryption that's going on based on that concept from the 1970s that will never make a computer fast enough to factor. Well, lo and behold, quantum computers get invented in 2015, and we started advancing them. And it turns out they can do lots of things, really amazing. A whole nother podcast should be the power of what's coming with quantum computing, because it's spectacular. Be able to answer questions we've never considered asking a computer. But one of the things that it can do, rather trivially, is factor any size number almost instantly. So when you have what we call a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, so one that's big enough to run this equation, suddenly the math problem that we've built all of our encryption in motion on, that simple math problem from the 1970s isn't valid anymore. And so we know that that's coming. We don't know the date certain. It's not like Y2K when we know, what night it was that we're going to have to plan for. But we know it's coming, and it's coming fast. So it's really important for us to do a couple of things. One, as a planet, we need to decide on a new standard that wasn't based on a math problem that we know is able to be cracked by a quantum computer. Come up with a new way. So instead of factoring, we need to come up with a new math. So luckily, 10 years or so ago, NIST started this global campaign to try and figure out what's the new math problem. What should we do? How should we do this? And 2024, this year, is when they announced the finalists. So they announced the new standard this year. So we've gone through 10 years of preparing for this. Now we have a new one. And so this new math problem, it's based on a math concept called lattice. And that math is not susceptible to a quantum attack. Doesn't matter what kind of quantum computer we build, we'll be fine. So now that we have this new one, there's the other half of the equation is how long does it take us to actually find all our old vulnerable encryption throughout our enterprise and then figure out a plan to remediate all that bring it up to spec, use the new algorithms, the new key management, and get it widely distributed. Last time we did this as a society was we went from the data encryption standard, or DES, to the advanced encryption standard, or AES. And that took 10 years to figure out what the new standard should be, and then another 10 years for everybody to go root it all out of the vulnerable encryption and put in the new encryption into their enterprise. They finally got through that, but it took end-to-end 20 years.
Wow.
So we know it's going to take a while. We know it's going to take longer to do it than we think that it will take for these quantum computers to advance to the point where they become a threat. There's lots of advances going on the threat side. So the answer to your question is not a date certain, but it's a 2 words: start now. We know it's going to take you a while, and we know that the threat is truly real and truly coming. It's not a question of if, but we know that we want to get everybody prepared in advance so they can relax afterwards.
Yeah, but it's human nature to want to have a number, a number of years. And I keep hearing 5, and I don't know who came up with that or if it's just a figment of my imagination, but I do hear 5 a lot. And is this something that you're hearing, Tom, or?
Oh, we hear, anything from, towards the end of this decade all the way out to 15, 20 years.
Okay.
We think that's a sliding scale. I can tell you that, having been an advisor at the White House on this exact problem for a while, they're in a really good position to know more than most. So they have the NSA at their beck and call that can tell them what's really going on, from what they know, not only in creating their own codes and defending themselves, but also, they try and figure out what the rest of the world's doing as well. And they report that unfiltered up to the White House. White House, the U.S. government also owns the largest attack surface in the world. All the networks that the government has. And they're also the most attacked of any kind of a system out there. So they get more attacks. So they care the most about this. And they put out an executive order when the current president, President Biden, was brought on board. He put out an executive order rather early on that said, if you are a U.S. government network, you must take quantum threat seriously. You must begin now your remediation. You must. It's an order. And if you're a critical infrastructure company, let's say you're in the banking world, or you're in the transportation world, or you're in any of the other 16 sectors, then we strongly recommend that you start now, because it's a long, laborious process. And so that's the message of the people that know the most are saying start now. And that's been picked up with other sectors. FS-ISAC has pretty much said those same 2 words out. Different governments around the world, the UK, most of the European countries, a lot of the Asian nations, are all saying essentially the same thing. If it's a government network, start now. And if it's critical infrastructure, we recommend you start now.
Yeah, you're stirring some thoughts around the fact that the FS-ISAC came out and said that, because, of course, all my financials are involved with that, and the ISACs in general. So maybe that's why I'm getting asked the question now, is that the advice is coming not only from the government sector, but also from the ISACs and the FS-ISAC in particular, to start now. Because there is, because we don't know the time, and because we do know it takes a long time, and I'm going to get into that because you have 8 steps. I think that's what you reviewed with me before, which is fascinating, right? Because people want a map of how to get to the end, right? How do I get there, and where do I start? And one of the places that, we've already talked about that my executives want to start is they want an assessment of their quantum risk. So they don't even know where all their encryption, and that's okay. It's a very difficult, over the years, you acquire a lot of encrypted components of your estate. But they want to know where all that encryption is. And you brought up something just a little bit ago about encryption, data in motion. And so there is some conversation around data at rest not being at risk, and data at motion being more at risk, or where they should focus first. But there's a couple questions in here. Where do we focus, and how do we do that initial assessment so we know our exposure?
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points, and at Accenture, We do this for our clients all over the world and across all the different sectors that are out there. And what became very clear to me as I started to do more and more of these, or my teams did around the world, is it's the same steps over and over again. Everybody needs to solve the same steps. And so helping them, understand what the problem is, how it relates to their company, let them get a real sense of coming up with a strategy, not solving it all, not fixing it all, not deciding everything, but understanding how big is the bread box, what will we have to do, what kind of systems will we have to change. One of the questions that comes up in our 6-week strategy engagement is which of your encryption is vulnerable. It turns out that you can ignore a lot of your encryption, the stored encryption, the data at rest encryption, wherever you don't use PKI to share those keys. So if the keys are stored in an HSM and it's only there and there's no movement, or they don't travel over, outside of your organization, that's not what is at risk from a quantum attack that we're talking about now. It's where we use PKI. It's where we had that shared secret, where you and I didn't know each other previously, and we need to create a key instantly that works that way. That's what's vulnerable to this. So it's not the AES algorithm that's at risk. It's the key management for it. So one of the things we discover in this first 6 weeks doing a strategy engagement is we go through and figure out which part of their stored encryption is fine and which part of their stored encryption is still using PKI and shared keys in order to access that stored data. And so there's two different sets, but we're able to rule out huge swaths of their network and their security risks right off the bat by focusing only on what's truly happening. One of the benefits of Accenture is we have not only a quantum security group, but we have a quantum computing group. And so we have access to all the right PhDs and quantum information scientists to see what is actually being able to be done on the compute side and what is vulnerable and what's not vulnerable. So we're able to rule that out pretty quickly. But right after, ruling it out, you've got now a big part of what's ruled in. Turns out public key encryption is everywhere on an organization. And most CISOs that I've worked with, didn't have anybody in charge of looking at that. Nobody knew what their answer was of, how much do they have and where is it? And where did you buy it? They've never been asked that. It's never been important. And now it is vitally important. So we're helping them go through a discovery process where you use automated tools to go through and scan for all sorts of issues where you might find public key encryption embedded into a network, embedded into a computer box, a router or a server or a firewall, or embedded into any of the applications that you use. All that has to be scanned and checked and then cataloged to figure out where are your risks and where's the most vulnerable. We're all security people. We all are, do risk-based analysis. So if it's old vulnerable encryption and the only thing it's protecting is tomorrow's lunch menu, that's not where I'd start. But if it's protecting the crown jewels of your organization or a critical path, service that you provide, and it's still using PKI, that's got to jump to the top of the list.
Are you able to delineate? This is a harder question, I guess. But are you able to delineate where they're using PKI to sensitive data versus not sensitive data? Are you looking at the data source or a target source?
Yeah, that's a really insightful question, Pam, and I'm glad you brought it up. If you just get a catalog, and that's what some people do, it's like, well, we'll just scan, or we've got scanning tools, and we'll just turn them for this and get a list. Then what you have is a giant spreadsheet full of numbers. What we do is we post-process that, and every time we find it, we process it back. We use artificial intelligence to go back to the quantum risk analysis that we did in phase 1. And during that strategy, we figure out what is being carried on that. What are the risks there? And we can apply that. So we end up not just with a list, but we end up with a sorted, prioritized list. And that gives you a really good heads up, because the remediation could take years. For a lot of Accenture's clients or some of the largest organizations in the world, it's going to take a while to go from DES to AES. It took a decade. So we don't think it'll take that long, but we think maybe we'll be able to cut it in half to find it all and root it all out. So we know that there's a lot of work to be done. So prioritization, doing a risk-based analysis of it, not just accounting analysis of it, turned out to be very, very crucial. So when we go out, our system is called Discovery Plus for that phase. And we go out, we find it all, but then we categorize it all with artificial intelligence, so it's still efficient. And we get results back on a weekly basis as we go through the scans to find out this is the new high priority, or this is in the high priority stack as you go through. But we find it everywhere. It's in the servers, in the laptops and things, obviously, but it's in all of your SaaS providers, all those services, your accounting system, your INA, your services that you buy, your patch management, whatever clouds you use, all those people are going through, the organizations are going through the same thing you're going through, your clients are going through right now. So it's important that, after the first step is strategy and the second is discovery, the third in our strategy, in our process, is ecosystem. And so we set up a bi-directional way for companies to start talking to their partners about what's going on with their quantum security upgrades. It's imperative that not only do you upgrade, but that all of your suppliers upgrade in the same way at about the same time. And that takes coordination. And so that's why we made that the third step in the process.
That is interesting. The ecosystem is so big. I won't say who, but just this week, one of my CISOs said, I'm not worried because I'm sure AWS is going to take care of this, or whatever your public, and that's great that the confidence is there, but you do have to think about all your third parties that you're working with, and I think of SaaS as the new OS, right? We use so much SaaS, hundreds of SaaS, and so you have to really think about the extended. But I like the prioritization. The fact that you can do that, because of course that's how we think in security. Everything is, we prioritize. We're all making risk-based decisions. I'm interested in understanding how long that, I guess it's a scanning process that you referred to. I'm only operating in Fortune 500, so these networks are huge and these ecosystems are huge. But you mentioned a timeline to do the assessment. I thought you said 6 weeks. I don't want to speak for you, though.
6 weeks to do the strategy.
The strategy. That was just wishful thinking.
Yeah, okay. But you mentioned one other thing. I'll get right back to that answer. But you mentioned something just now, which is really important. Your cloud providers are going through this themselves, and they are going to take care of it. But they don't control everything that an enterprise does. They don't make your laptops. They don't make your firewalls in many cases. They don't make your phones. They don't make the cameras that are in your security. They don't make the PIV cards that you use for access. All that has to be coordinated in the ecosystem process. So no one's going to do this for you. Everyone's going to do their fair share. But it's critical that you do your fair share as well. You figure out what your risks are and what needs to be done. And then when you upgrade in a consistent way with your existing ecosystem partners, or you're going to end up, having one of your key SaaS providers or cloud providers not being able to work with you anymore. You won't be able to talk. So that'll be a problem as you go forward.
Interesting. You just brought up, what I call IT IoT, right? Cameras and printers. I didn't even. It
everything.
You know what? It just keeps getting bigger.
It does, and that's why we've made this the Discovery Plus process that we do, and we don't time box it. What we say is that in 6 months we can get a really good result back to the client to get them going on the process, and at that point they'll know what the continuation looks like. And there's a couple of really important variables for this. One, when we say that we're going to go in and scan, it's a 4-phase scanning process that we do at Accenture. The first phase is all about taking existing output. There's a lot of documentation and data and network diagrams and PCAP files and all sorts of things that are accumulated in running a big organization. A lot of that have clues for where encryption lies. So we have a way to ingest all that in a very efficient way and start with a base summary that maybe has 30 to 50% of the mapping already there, if you know how to look and what to do with it. So we take that and then we post-process it. Then there's a series of new quantum security scanning tools that have been created just over the past couple of years, brand new companies that just popped up out of small emerging tech in this space because no one was doing this before. So it's a great place for emerging tech. And there's some really good tools out there. So we've brought some of the best tools that we like into our Accenture's quantum security test lab. So we now have those tools that we operate at scale around the world. So we take away the risk of a small emerging company, and we have Accenture trained people to operate them. We can operate them and deliver this anywhere in the world now. But those tools are in the second phase. They can find a lot of stuff. They can scan whole swaths of networks. They can scan whole swaths of types of files that are out there. And then that does that post-processing that I talked about automatically. So it ties that back into the risk analysis. That gets more. But then there's always, companies, especially organizations like you support and Accenture supports around the world. They've been around for a while, and they've got a whole collection of things. They're like, oh, well, yeah, it would be nice if it was all this brand new 5-year-old stuff, but we've got technical debt stuff that still has to run. We've got mainframes, and we've got special purpose devices. All that needs to be scanned as well. So it turns out there's a lot of bespoke scanners that have been created for this kind of a mainframe application, or this kind of an old COBOL language programs that you did. There are bespoke scanners for that to identify the crypto that's in those. So we've accumulated a large library of these bespoke scanners. So in the third phase of Discovery Plus, we actually go through and apply, look for the ones that the big tools couldn't get, and then go through and start doing, still automated, but in a smaller, a little bit less efficient way. And then finally, every company that we've done this for, and we've done it for a lot, every company has also had a few really important, completely compiled programs and systems that run, and they have no idea how. They don't have documentation. They don't know where it came from. They just know not to touch it because it's doing something really important. And, if that's talking to anybody else, it's probably got encryption in there somehow. We need to figure out what it is and how that would be upgraded. So we actually, since Accenture is one of the largest malware analysis firms in the world, we actually leverage our malware teams to go through, and we've built using some generative AI processes with our malware analysis tools. We actually can go in and look at a completely compiled, no documentation program and identify where the encryption, if there's vulnerable encryption in there, and what it is and where it's being used. So we're able to do that. That's the least efficient, but it's also the fewest number that you do. But collectively, through all 4 of those phases of Discovery Plus, we can give the client a really good picture. The first 2 phases we can generally get done in 6 months. And so there's a 6-month tranche of that. And at the end of that, they get a detailed report of what their vulnerabilities look like, but they also get a good mapping of what else needs to be done. And sometimes that's nothing, and other times that's a lot. And it just depends on the kind of network and operations. So this can go on for a couple of years of scanning. But I said that there's 2 parts to this. One is that I just described, and you're doing this because you want to be quantum safe. But the other is the byproduct of this is cryptography management. What these scanners are doing and giving a company is cryptography management. And cryptography management has a lot of really positive byproducts now. If you know what certificates are going to expire next Tuesday, it would be good to upgrade them now and not wait until next Wednesday when something breaks. It turns out a lot of big organizations just track certificates in a spreadsheet. Or they just it's somebody's part-time job, but nobody's really looking at the cryptography writ large unless you're in one of the largest organizations. So this gives you this sort of instant look at your cryptography, and we have some clients that have kept the scanners in there for life. They're just like, hey, we really like this. We can go in and find, see what all of our cryptography is doing at any given point. So there are benefits to that. So it's not necessarily just a snapshot that we take, but we end up increasing the cryptography management capabilities of our clients, which is a big, real, near-term benefit, as well as preparing for the future.
That, you make such a good point, because you want, with any investment, to have a near-term benefit too. You want, and so and also, I'm smiling because it's making me think, and not to digress, but just I have to say this. I bet that they think certain things are encrypted that are not.
Well, that is, and I think you'll find every CISO will have an honest moment and tell you that, they expect us to find unencrypted things, then they expect us to find under encrypted things.
Or under, yeah.
Encrypted with small key lengths that are just, they shouldn't be doing that. They know they shouldn't, but no one's ever pointed that out. So able to find a lot of those problems. Also, if you look at malware, how that works, it sneaks itself in through some vulnerability, and then it moves laterally. But most lateral communication has been sealed up. Microsegmentation works now, and there's lots of good protections against lateral movement. But what happens? The new malware is still moving around laterally. How's it doing it? It's breaking the encryption, the under encrypted stuff, the unencrypted stuff. It's finding those pathways. So one of the byproducts, in addition to just better crypto management, is you're reducing your risk to malware by being able to spot the under and unencrypted stuff and bring that up to code now, so that you stop the ease of some of this new ransomware is just phenomenal in its level of capabilities there. So just a few years ago, it would just, if you tried to move left and there was microsegmentation, and it would stop and it was done. Now it's like, okay, what can we crack in here? What do we find that's unencrypted? What do you find that's under encrypted that we know how to break? And just go at it. So a lot of benefits to doing discovery the right way. What we try to do with what way we do it with Discovery Plus is we get you in 6 months to a really good result, an actionable result, and that lets you automatically start talking about remediation, which is where everybody wants to get. It's like, okay, we found all this bad stuff. We found all these new vulnerabilities that exist. We know that the clock is ticking. What do we do about it? And that's where it's really the fun part, because there's a lot of really clever new architecture capabilities that are available for remediation that make that job much easier than people think it's going to be. It's not a rip and replace. It's not a find everything and upgrade every single thing. It's not a whole new way to do key management. There's lots of really new, again, a lot of small emerging tech companies involved. There's a lot of new clever ways to go and address that are really exciting. We're able to, in some cases, begin seeing remediation results in less than a month of doing the discovery. So it's a fun part of the business to be in.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, what if there was a secondary question that I get most common, other than, how far away is this? Maybe that's number one. Number two is, how do I assess how big my problem is? And number three is, do I have to rip and replace?
Right.
They don't want to. They want that. Can't you just come in and fix my current encryption? I mean,
right. That's what your CISO was alluding to. Can't the cloud company just do this for me? Or can't the operating system company just do this for me? And they're going to do their parts. We're already seeing some improvements there. Some new systems. Apple's Messenger now has quantum encryption in it end to end. That's going forward, and there's other small examples of that. So it's coming. A lot of CISOs have been waiting for when is NIST ready? When does NIST say what the new standard is? And we've been told that that's going to happen in the first half of 2024 of this year.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you had said that Lattice was that what you referred to?
So Lattice is the math behind it.
Okay.
And then once they decided on that, there were still dozens of competing algorithms to try and do it. Then they knock off this one or find a hole in that one, or this one is too slow. And now they've got the one that they think, or the handful of ones that they think are the finalists. But they haven't made that the standard yet. So that process will take place. They have to choose, and they have to send it to Department of Commerce. Then the Department of Commerce has to do some things with it before it becomes an actual global standard. But we expect that to happen over the next couple of months, and that is sort of the starting bell for a lot of companies to get CISOs to get serious. Like, okay, now that there is an answer. I need to take care of this. So we need to start that 8-step process: strategy, and then discovery, and then ecosystem, and then you get into architecture, and then you get into test beds. Then you have limited trials. Then you can move to rollout, and then ultimately you get to a steady state where it's just managed as another managed service. You just manage the new encryption like you manage the old, And you'll find that once you've gone that path with some of these new technologies, it's much easier to manage this stuff to an even better result from a risk perspective. So everyone's going to go through that. We think the standards coming out of NIST will be that opening bell for a lot of sectors. Finance is sort of already heard that bell and have already started. Most financial services companies, at least on the banking side, have already done their strategy. And this is the year 2024 is when they're looking at the discovery phase of the process. Just by and large, I can say that. Other sectors are probably a year or two behind that. So it's just a matter of waking up and seeing. We're seeing movement in transportation, in communications, in health. Just going through the top tier of the critical infrastructure sectors, as you might imagine. And so there's a lot of work being underway now and getting started. But everyone's going through these same 8 steps. So including Accenture. We're a big company too. We have almost 800,000 people around the world. We seem to acquire a new company every month or so since I've been here. So our networks are, we've got 3 of everything, just like, the worst of our clients do. So since we've been going through this ourselves, we built accelerators at each of these steps. So we invented ways to take that strategy down from a open-ended year-long, start with the blank sheet of paper. Now we have a strategy compendium of all the best practices from all the sectors and all the countries, everybody that's published anything for what a strategy should be for quantum. We pulled that all together so that we can then use that to personalize exactly what's right for each of our clients. So we brought it down to 6 weeks. Same with discovery. We use discovery tools that are custom made for this exact process. We like ones that have some back-end artificial intelligence to even make it shorter in time in order to make these numbers and the findings relevant. Ecosystem, we have a large experience as Accenture, you might imagine, working with sectors as well as with companies. So we're able to either form or support ecosystems that are propping up in all of these different sectors right now and making it easier to get part of it. And then for remediation, we haven't talked much about it, but really good news around this concept of crypto agility. That's where people are aiming. If you one of the questions I get a lot at the board level is what does good look like? And good looks like, you found everything and you've implemented a crypto agility architecture, and you're slowly over the course of this year moving your most at-risk areas under the protection of crypto agility as you go forward. But crypto agility is this concept of there's always going to be another algorithm. There's going to be another threat. This decade it's the quantum threat, but who knows what next year is going to be? Something else. We never predicted this threat, and in the 1970s we used to say it would, the PKI would last 1,000 lifetimes, and we said that very confidently. And I said it. I repeated it. I wasn't part of it, but I repeated it because that's what the smart people said back in the 70s. So who knows what the future holds? So putting in the concept of crypto agility allows you to rotate your algorithms throughout your organization from a central, organized, orchestrated button. So you have one pane of glass for all of your cryptography throughout your organization. So yes, we're using RSA today. You want to switch to Kyber, which is the new standard coming out of NIST. You can press one button and it can then go out and orchestrate that throughout your entire organization, that giving you crypto agility. It sounds like magic, and it doesn't work for all aspects of your enterprise yet, but it works for a lot. And we've done it in a lot of places. We actually did it in space. We put it into satellites that were in low Earth orbit, and we controlled them from a geosynchronous satellite 22,300 miles above that. And we were able to simulate a quantum attack as the satellites went over a particular part of the world that might be, have early access to quantum computers, and then automatically have that understand the risk profile has changed now and automatically rotate in the Kyber algorithm instead of the RSA algorithm, and still be able to send messages from endpoint to endpoint without missing a beat. So if we're able to do it in space, we've been able to do it with lots of organizations around the world today. And like I said, we're able to get results much quicker. In one case, in less than a month, just under a month, we're able to get to real results. So we're seeing that once you get into, like, with the strategy, we're starting not with a blank sheet of paper, but with a lot of the answer already there, and it's customizing it. With discovery, there's really great tools available that make that job a heck of a lot easier. I know a lot of CISOs that have been trying to do it manually, and either gave up or think
Really?
they're never going to get. Yeah, they're never going to get there just
No.
with their own people going out and let me check this, let me check that, and so finding these tools is a great labor saver. And then on remediation, when we show them the power of crypto agility and some different ways that we can get them there, their eyes just jump for joy, because that is what good looks like. You never have to go through the crypto changeover again. And in this case, it'll save years in terms of remediation time in order to get a lot of your most vulnerable areas cleaned up and ready to go.
I mean, I hear a lot of good news here, right? I hear, well, we don't have to worry about our data at rest. We get immediate benefits with malware and actual inventory of the crypto. But you just barely touched on the 8 steps. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, so the 8 steps are something that we just wrote down because it was the same with every client we did all over the world, and even with some that I worked on with the government before I came to Accenture. Step 1 is strategy. You don't want to start in the middle of this and just download the algorithms and see if you can make sense of it. You'll end up scratching your head and throwing in the too hard pile. Just because encryption isn't a solo game. You have to do it in a coordinated way with all sorts of other systems. So coming up with that strategy, organizing, bringing in your purchasing department. One of the things that we set up in our strategy right away is stop buying things that are going to be broken in a few years. So change your buying habits now. You still have to fix all your old stuff, but stop compounding the problem. Bring your purchasing department in, help them with the new regs. It's not just, lowest cost isn't the winner. Maybe it's lowest cost that supports post-quantum security built in.
Yeah, don't keep adding to the problem.
Exactly. So the strategy has we have 70 pages of that kind of wisdom that is the best-in-class stuff that we've discovered and that other people have discovered and shared around the world. So then, and it touches all sorts of aspects of your company. It's not a CISO-only issue. I spend a lot of time. I spend as much time with board members as I do with CISOs right now, because the budgets need to be set, the priorities need to be set, the right questions need to be asked. So all that is covered in the strategy engagement of 6 weeks. Then we go right into the discovery process, and that takes about 6 months to get that first big chunk. We do is Discovery Plus, where we actually do not just the scanning, but the prep work, reading ingesting the existing stuff, and then doing the harder one-off type things afterwards. So you get a complete picture. Step 3 is the ecosystem. And if you're in a sector like financial services, there already are ecosystems, and we help our clients get involved with them. And that way, you not only are asking what they're doing, but you're giving them guidance. A lot of these products, these SaaS vendors and product vendors, they want to do whatever you want to buy. So they want to know what you want, what direction you're going. So just getting that bi-directional conversation going, it's an ongoing process. And for that, we've created a database of what the most popular products and services SaaS companies are doing for post-quantum. So I think we've got about 75 companies in the database now. I have a goal to have that team be up to 250 of the most common products and services by year's end. And so every time we do another engagement, we add 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 new ones that weren't already on the list. And so we build that up. But so the third step is ecosystem. Then we get to step 4, which is architecture. So before you download algorithms, but after you already sort of see what your problem is, you come up with what's the right architecture. And there are 3 common architectures to choose from or to combine. One is straight substitution, and we have smaller groups or with easier networks that are just saying we're going to pull out the old and put in the new and be done with it. Most common right now and most gone for and aimed at is crypto agility, which, as I talked about, where you can rotate the algorithms anywhere from an orchestrated console, and a lot of good ways and approaches to do that. And then the third is something called QKD, or quantum key distribution. That's where you actually use quantum physics itself to move the keys around. And in a perfect world, that's the most secure, because quantum physics has a bunch of cool properties, one of which is if you look at something, it changes it. And so if someone's looking at your key, to automatically rotate it and change it. So it's a really good approach. Just the physics isn't quite there yet in practice. So we've got it working. We collectively as a planet have it working, at a sort of a campus level or small town level. You can go 30, 40 miles over fiber and work pretty well. But after that, the too much noise gets into the system and degrades it. So we think that's a good part for a defense in depth approach. And we're seeing a lot of organizations, clients of ours in Europe, in the Middle East, and Asia, adopting it more so than in the US. But it's definitely part of a defense in depth practice for the most security conscious companies. So that's all figured out in the architecture. So now you have the step 4, the architecture. Step 5 is when you go in and create these test environments. So you go and say, okay, so we have these things, and we think we want this, and we want that, and we want this way for scanning, but we don't know if it all actually works together. We don't know if it's going to be fast enough. These new algorithms work differently. They have different key lengths. Will they be too long? Will it take too much time? So you have to look for interoperability and test for performance, and that isn't done anywhere. No one's done that. You can't just go buy the book because everything is too brand new. So what we do is we set up a test environment for our clients in stage 5, where we simulate what they have, and then we bring in the tools that they think that they want, the algorithms that they think that they're going to use, and we test it for performance and for compatibility. And then once you clear that, then you kind of know, okay, let's do a trial. So step 6 is trials. And you take a quiet corner of your enterprise that's really live, but not critical, and you slowly bring this on, and you use it for a little bit, then you turn it off, and you watch, see what it did. And depending on how conscious you are on risk, sometimes that process could take years. As we don't want to mess anything up. We want to trial it. Let's see what that's happened. Did this change? But you want to get comfortable at your trials. And then you have a rollout phase, and the rollout phase is substantial, depending on your enterprise. Finding all using all the found vulnerabilities, and then finding ways to mitigate them. Like I said, with the crypto agility, you can take out whole swaths of them with one button, as opposed to a lot of upgrades. But overall, the rollout we expect for any of our type clients is a multi-year process in order to find all that. And then step 8 is when you get to the point where it's actually a managed service, and you don't have to do extraordinary things. After that, we think no one's to that point yet. My earliest customer that's been at this for 5 years is almost to stage 7. They're almost getting comfortable with the trials and understand the risk. And they went with crypto agility, and which is good because when we started this, we didn't know what algorithm NIST was going to standardize on. So we actually, they actually are running one today that is not going to be the standard. It's fine, but it's not going to be the standard. So when the new one comes out, they press a button and it automatically rotates the new Kyber algorithms in. So that's where the most advanced companies are. And then by the end of this decade, we want all of our clients to be at that easy managed service. What we say is, if you prepare now and relax later, those headlines are going to hit at some point in all of our careers, and they're going to say, country X has got a quantum computer big enough to crack all your public key encryption. Or if it's not a country, an organized crime group has got this, or a university has it, but it's being made available to anybody and can do this. So those press releases and headlines are going to come out. And that's just the ones that are announced. If you're an adversarial country, you're probably not going to put out a press release saying, I can break your codes. They're just going to break your codes. So, we don't know exactly. But at some point, by the end of this decade, we want all of our clients to be in that relaxed, prepared way so that they can move forward. So when that press release happens and their board calls down and say, are we at risk? They can say, no, boss, we're good. We prepared and we can relax.
No, I appreciate a roadmap, like that you have an 8-step process that's very clear, and that you have customers on that journey. So it's not like we know it works. You've been through it, right? There's those proof points are super important. I know we're out of time, but I want to just ask one final question, and that is, this is a total guess on your side, but it's an important question of the large enterprises and, the Fortune 500 or even Fortune 100. What percentage do you think has started this journey?
Well, it's interesting. In the financial sector, I went to an FSI SAC and had a birds of a feather of CISOs and had 12 of them around a table. This was 2.5 years ago. And I said, nothing binding and all Chatham House and everything, but raise your hand if your company is actively involved in a quantum security defense. And every hand went up. And no one had been talking about it. So FS is definitely more advanced than others. But there's definitely a lot of activity. And like I said, we're looking at this year with the NIST announcements coming up this year as sort of the opening bell for most companies to start to take seriously. And if I can just give a couple of final thoughts, one is taking it seriously does not mean start to download the new algorithms from NIST and start working on it. It is go through this path, get a strategy first, figure out what your vulnerabilities are, figure out what your partners are doing, then start to look at what's the right architecture. This new algorithm it works fine. So it'll work fine for you, but using it right, deploying it right, that's going to make or break everything you're doing. And there is some safety in numbers. We launched a thing at Davos this year. You go to accenture.com/quantum, you can sign up for something called the Quantum Security Maturity Index. I'm a big believer in things like CMMI and other security services and measurement systems that have really helped boards and companies get behind and supportive of the important work that security teams have to do. And so we've created the Quantum Security Maturity Index, or QSMI, in order to bring that same capability to the quantum security journeys. So it's an easy numbering system, 1 through 5. It's designed to help companies answer the question, where are you in your quantum security journey? And rather than saying, well, the this and that and the other thing and spooky and all that, you can say we're at level 1.2. Most of the financial services companies have said they should be at 2.2 by the end of 2024. And so we need to go up and step and do these next 5 steps, the rest of this year. And so it's a 5-step journey broken down to 25 sub-steps throughout the whole thing. And we've gotten a lot of agreement. Accenture launched it at Davos. We invited anyone that wants to participate. It's totally open. It's not something we sell. It's just something that's open to use the same. It's the same, common nomenclature and numbering. So we've got great companies and partners that have adopted this already. In addition to Accenture, Microsoft has adopted it. IBM has adopted it, and a lot of big organizations that are behind this. Deutsche Bank has adopted. A lot of big companies around the world have said, yeah, this makes sense to us. We want this common numbering scheme. We'll help evolve it and go forward. So accenture.com/quantum, anybody can get involved and download what we currently have and watch as it evolves. We've timed to sort of go live with it whenever the new standard is announced by NIST in the next couple of months. But if you want early information, we're happy to share with everybody.
That's super helpful, because right now, as you know, and when I reached out to you, was really answering that question as, an assessment. How big is my issue? And that we've said a few times is a 6-week process. We've got to just get started. That's it. And this is where you start. And then, that strategy document or that assessment document tells you so much. And so this has been so helpful, Tom. I so appreciate you're a wealth of knowledge. And like I said, it's an honor to have you on Vigilance. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Pam. And I wish everybody well. And I'll end with words I started with: start now.
Start now. I agree.